All right, so we are reading, what a great chapter, the Silmarillion, of the coming of the Elves and the Captivity of Melkor. Such a like banger title. Like, let's just call it what it is. There's no messing around here. So this is chapter 3. So what we get in this chapter is we start with basically just there's bliss in Aman. Like the Valar are playing chess and Uno and chilling out in Aman. And Middle-earth is just dank and gross, and Melkor is experimenting on animals and making dark things and hanging out with the Balrogs and just a shitload of fire. So that's all cool, right? Like, no need to do anything. Like, you've only been told by Iluvatar that Middle-earth is where the elves are going to arrive, or the children of Iluvatar. I don't even think they were called elves back then. They weren't. The children of Iluvatar were going to arrive on Middle-earth, but it's fine. Just let it kind of become stagnant and chill out in Aman. Why not? I love the description. All of Middle-earth lay in a twilight under the stars. So Melkor is making a fortress and an armory in the sort of northwestern shores of the sea, wherever that is. So the stronghold that he makes, Angbad, is commanded by Sauron, the lieutenant of Melkor. So, okay, so Sauron and Melkor are chilling out together. Not chilling, they are, like, probably really unhappy with each other. But I don't know the story of Sauron. I kind of want to know his story. I don't know if we're going to get that in this book or if it's in another book. But anyway, maybe he goes back and forth a bit and tricks people up. I don't know. It's really interesting. I was going back to a section back in Valaquenta. And in Valaquenta, the elves who hated the Morgoth the most were the Noldor, for they suffered most of his malice. Anyway, so switching back to Aman, the Valar hold a council. They're doing something, thankfully. And they're just like, it's been so long, we're doing nothing. No, they're doing heaps of stuff, I'm sure. At least I know Aule's doing a bunch of stuff. He's at some point made these chains that they're about to chain Melkor up in. No, it's Yavanna, actually, because Yavanna and Orome are the only ones who still occasionally deign to go back to Middle-earth. Yavanna because she's scared for her plant babies, and Orome because I think he needs space to roam around on, otherwise he's going to go crazy. So the hour approaches. This is what Yavanna is saying. The children are going to be awake and we're just sitting here. Shall they walk in darkness while we have the light? Thank you, Yavanna, for saying this. Like, I was reading this and thinking, what are they doing? And Yavanna is like all of us internally, like being like, yeah, what the hell are you guys doing? So thank you, Yavanna, for voicing the thoughts of all of us. Shall they call Melkor Lord while Manwë sits here in Taniquetil? Or Taniquetil? Exactly. So thank you for pointing that out to Manwë. And there is a part of me that's so disappointed in Manwë for like not being more proactive. And this is where I am just losing faith in a lot of these Valar. But interestingly, I do think this is exactly what Iluvatar wanted. I think Iluvatar wanted Middle-earth to fall into darkness so that it is in darkness that the elves, that his children are born. And we can never guess the mind of a god, or if it even is a mind. But anyway, I do think that all of this is Iluvatar's plan. Tulkas is totally on board. He's like, yes, let's go to war. Mandos then sort of says, the firstborn shall come in the darkness and shall look first upon the stars. Great light shall be for their waning. To Vada ever shall they call at need. So for some reason, Manwë has been like, knows what's going on. Manwë knows that their role, because Manwë is the one who's supposed to know the mind of Iluvatar most. So Manwë, even though it seems like he's being not proactive, is actually, he knows this is how it should be. And then he gets Mandos to back him up by saying, hey Mandos, tell them all how it is. And Mandos is like, yes, exactly. So the children will be born into doom, which will then, into darkness, which will then make them turn their eyes up to the bright stars in wonder. And they will then love the light even more so because they are born in darkness, and it's because of that that they will then be attracted to the light and want to come back to Aman. As he says here, great light shall be for their waning. So it's actually really hard to interpret that sentence, but I think it's really important. I've had to read the chapter twice to kind of get my head around it. For their waning meaning at the end of their lives. I mean, sure, elves are immortal, but there is going to be an end there's an illusion that there is going to be an end for the elves anyway, but the greatest light is for the end of the elves, not the beginning, like the end of their journeys and their lives. The beginning is for darkness. That's how I've interpreted this. I will have to read it again at some point, but I think that quote from Mandos basically sums up this whole chapter and sums up everything that felt wrong about this chapter, but like Mandos is here saying, no, this is how it was going to be. Yes, we're aware that this is not ideal, but this is how it's going to be, and it is for the best somehow. It is for the best that the children of Iluvatar are going to be born into a troubled land that is roaming with monsters from Melkor, and they will come to know fear and evil and cowardice because of it, but also they'll come to know bravery and the goodness of light because of it. So Varda's like, fine, I understand the assignment, and she goes off and makes the stars using the light of the silver dews from the vats of Telporium. Menel Maekar strode up to the sky, and the blue fire of Helluin flickered in the mists above the borders of the world. In that hour the children of Earth awoke, the firstborn of Iluvatar. My babies. And I've probably said those names wrong. Cuivienen is where they are. That is not on this map. This is the map I have. That is not on this map. This map, the one that Tolkien did, there's no Cuivienen on here. I think Cuivienen is far off. I think this map is only the very westmost part of Middle Earth. And so I don't think we're getting the whole story here, and that's okay. There is the most beautiful picture of the Cuivienen, which is known as the Water of Awakening, in the book that I'm reading, and I can't stop looking at it. They kind of look like all mini Greek gods all standing around this beautiful lake, and 2/3 of the picture is just taken up by all these stars. And actually, yes, I'm going to have a bunch of probably fan art through this whole video I'm making, and I will link it all below. The thing that's so beautiful about this is that like the first thing that they see when they open their eyes is the starlight. Therefore they've ever loved the starlight and have revered Varda Elentari above all the Valar. So we finally, because it was talked about in a previous chapter that the elves do love Varda above all of the other Valar, and now we finally see why, and it's just so beautiful and it makes so much sense. The elves also, so starlight was the first thing that they saw, but they also loved water, which I find very interesting, and I'll talk about Ulmo in a tick, because Ulmo is like still probably just like the coolest Valar, I think, for sure. So they're chilling, they create a home by the water under the stars. Cuivienen must be so beautiful. And what I really like is when Orome came to the elves and recognized them for what they were, he was filled with wonder. And it's interesting because the elves also would have been filled with wonder looking at Orome, and it's like this sort of symbiosis they have. But I do think that the Valar have more wonder for the children of Iluvatar than vice versa, even though you would think it would be the other way around. You'd think that elves and men would have far more wonder and awe for the creatures that are more wondrous than them. But no, it is actually the other way around, because the Valar have been waiting and hoping and desiring and loving the children of Iluvatar before they have come into existence, well before they've come into existence, and every moment of their life, even though they've been sitting down around in a man doing not much, has been trying to prepare Middle Earth for them. Imperfectly, but anyway, let's not go there again. Oh mate, I reckon he probably freaks out and like his heart's pounding and looking upon the elves was filled with wonder, as though they were being sudden and marvellous and unforeseen, and for so it shall ever be with the Valar. This book is actually beautiful. I cannot even reading it slowly is making it just even better. Tolkien makes a point that the elves back in the day were physically stronger than they've since become, but they're equally as beautiful. Damn, these elves. If only I could stay equally as beautiful even as my body started failing. For the beauty of the Quendi in the days of their youth was beyond all other beauty that Iluvatar has caused to be. It has not perished, but lives in the west, and sorrow and wisdom has enriched it. Could we just take a moment to think about this? Okay, so for starters, Iluvatar is now saying that the elves are more beautiful than anything he has made. So more beautiful than the Valar, than Maya, beyond all other beauty that Iluvatar has caused to be. So in Iluvatar's eyes, the Quendi are more beautiful than everything in Ea. I think really he's not just talking about physical beauty, he's talking about everything. But wow, what a statement. Also kind of insulting to men, but like, wow. And then he says that the beauty doesn't fade because sorrow and wisdom enrich it. And isn't that just poignant to think that yes, over many hundreds and then thousands of years that you live, everything that you come across in your life enriches your beauty, it enriches your soul. I really think that what Iluvatar means by beauty is the beauty of the soul. But like to him, the souls of the elves are just the most beautiful thing to behold. And that is why the Valar love it so much. I mean, I'm assuming the Valar also have souls, but there's something more special about the souls of the children of Iluvatar. God, it just, you feel special yourself when you read this book, because you are like, oh, if there are angels that exist and Valar, like us mortals, well, there are no elves in this world, I guess, but you also feel kind of special when you're reading this as well. Anyway, I could talk about this for so long. I really wish I had someone to talk to about this face to face, and I just have to talk to a silent camera. Orome calls them the Eldar, the people of the stars, which is beautiful. But the problem is that because Melkor technically found the elves first before Orome, but Melkor, I was thinking, why didn't Melkor just go and like kill all of them and take all of the elves? But really the reason Melkor didn't do that, he just sent out like monsters and like shadows on horses to try and lure them in and take them back one by one, rather than just going in and killing them all, because Orome was actually, because Melkor was terrified of Orome. Because Melkor remembered what happened last time and he's just like, I don't want to get badgered up again. So, oh my goodness. So basically what we find out is that a lot of the elves during this time before Orome found them, and also probably around the time Orome found them, is that a lot of them went missing and into the darkness, and the elves that went missing were the ones who have been turned into orcs. Because we know from the previous chapter that Aule created dwarves, but he couldn't put souls and life into them, nor can Melkor put lives into orcs. He had to create, the only way that Melkor could make live orcs was to use pre-existing souls from the children of Iluvatar. So that's one big kind of FU from Iluvatar to Melkor, being like, well, at the end of the day, I am the only thing that can create actual souls. But then Melkor's like, well, if I can't create my own, I'm going to dirty the ones that already exist. He's already dirtied the souls of a lot of the Maya, and I'm assuming other Ainur have also come to Melkor's side, like not the Valar, but maybe other Ainur Melkor lured in, but definitely some of the Maya. Sauron included, and other spirits and things like that. So yeah, Melkor greatly hated and feared the riding of Orome, and so he sent his dark servants as riders and set lying whispers abroad for the purpose that the Quendi should shun Orome if they ever should meet. So Melkor's like, I'm not going out there by myself. Orome will kill me in a duel. Melkor still hasn't learned how to fight and just be brave. All he's good at doing is manipulating from the dark, which is exactly what he's doing right now. And because of that, a lot of the elves do not trust Orome, and that has downstream consequences. It's quite cute though that the elves that had the most courage were the ones that stayed and trusted Orome. So a lot of the stronger-willed elves are the ones that ended up not getting lost, which is cool. But I'm going to come back to this point because some of that changes later with the splitting of the elves. But the orcs, it's really sad about the orcs. Basically, the orcs are a mockery of the elves, and Iluvatar, like, for Iluvatar, this is probably the most hateful deed, this says, is the most vile and hateful deed to Iluvatar. Whether or not Iluvatar actually took it as the most hateful deed, because the last sentence here on page 39, and toward the bottom, this, it may be, was the vilest deed of Melkor and the most hateful to Iluvatar. So this is interesting because one could read this from the point of view of Iluvatar saying, oh yeah, the creation of the orcs was the thing that I hated most. But also, this, you could read this from the POV of Melkor, and Melkor just has done this to spite Iluvatar and thinks it's his greatest spiteful deed yet. But he could be wrong, because this could all just be Iluvatar's plan that orcs were supposed to be made or something of that nature. So it's hard to know how to interpret that last sentence, if that is, because it's just kind of the unreliable narrator coming in here. Like, depending on whose POV this is, you just can't judge as to what is the actual truth. The orcs hate themselves and hate their master, which is, like, they loathe their existence, which to me, I would say, yes, that has to be the most hateful thing from Iluvatar's POV. And it's just so sad that they were the elves that were most scared. And they were just trying to protect themselves, you know, and they got turned into orcs. And it's kind of heartbreaking, really, when you think about it. So Orome eventually goes back to, he chills with the Quendi for quite a while. How long? I don't know, 100 years before he goes back and actually tells everyone about it. The Valar, like, are super happy about it. They rejoice, but they're really unhappy because they are scared about the shadows of Melkor over the Quendi. And so they send Orome back at once to basically try to find a way to convince for the elves to come back to Aman so that they're nice and safe. Eventually Manwë, they hold another council, and this time Ulmo comes. Yay, love my Ulmo time. And they all agree to go to war to get rid of Melkor. And what I really like about the sentence here is that never did Melkor forget that this war was made for the sake of the elves and that they were the cause of his downfall. So Melkor is pissed off that he lost, sure, but I think Melkor would have much preferred to have lost because people were making war against him because he was just powerful and threatening. He hates the fact that the war was made, not because he was necessarily just dominating, but because the love that the Valar have for the elves was greater than their hatred for Melkor. And for that, Melkor hates the elves above all else. And we've already come across that before, at some point previously, that he especially hates the elves. And this is the reason why. So we have war, and a bunch of the topography is getting rearranged yet again. This is what the Valar do. And all the while the elves are like, can you hear that earthquake, mummy? Finally we get Tulkas throwing Melkor down upon his face. Melkor is then bound up in chains which have a name called Angainor that Aule has made, and then he's led captive, and the world had peace for a long age. I mean, the obvious question to ask is, if the Valar had the power to do this the whole time, why didn't they do it before? Anyway, let's not logic ourselves out of a fantasy book. So apparently after they kind of get into Angbad and Utumno, there's a bunch of stuff that they don't actually discover. So they did not discover all the mighty vaults and caverns. So there's still a lot of evil things they've not uncovered. And they also lost the track of Sauron. Dun dun dun. So Sauron is definitely coming back somewhere in the future and causing havoc. And then they take Melkor back to Valinor to lock him up in the fastness of Mandos, whence none can escape, neither Valar, nor elf, nor mortal man. Well, if a Valar can't escape, not a man's not escaping. And Melkor was doomed to abide for 3 ages long. I don't know how long an age is, but 3 ages sounds like a long time. Before his cause should be tried anew, or he should plead again for pardon. He did try to plead, but they were just like, yeah, nah. Nah, mate. Nah. He begged, lay upon his face. The vision of Melkor begging whilst he's like got his head on the ground is quite funny and humiliating. He's not forgetting this. He's gonna be real angry about this later. Really angry. But he obviously can't die, so maybe murder is not something that the Valar can do, but it would have been better if he was killed right now, because I know that he's chained up somewhere, and when someone is in chains, it means they're gonna escape, and there's gonna be some naughty elf that helps him escape, and I'm assuming by the chapter title of chapter 6 that Fëanor is that naughty elf who unchains Melkor. I could be wrong, but we'll see. Bloody elves. So anyway, they go back and have another debate after Melkor has been tied up in Mandos, the fastness of Mandos, and Ulmo is just like, well, Melkor's gone, most of the evil is gone. Why don't we just clean up some of the rest of it and just let them live as intended by Iluvatar? And the other Valar are like, nah, let's make them come here, because it's so hard for us creatures who can fly through the sky to get to Middle Earth. God, wouldn't want to do that. What a trek. Let's make these creatures who have bare feet and 2 legs go over 58 sets of mountains to get here. That makes so much sense. I mean, that wasn't Ulmo's point. Ulmo's point was just let them live. Because he is the true neutral character. That's why I like him so much. But also, like, if Ulmo was to further argue this, he'd be like, why not us go to them? Why make them come here? And it is the light of the trees. They're like, you've got to see the light of the trees. They're like so cool and stuff. Valar and Logic aren't best friends, it seems. They follow their little hearts. That's what they do. So, everyone else wants to coddle the elves, but Ulmo wants them to just kind of fend for themselves. That would have been a different world. And eventually Ulmo is outvoted, and because basically they feared for the Quendi in the dangerous world amid the deceits of the starlit dusk. Oh my god, the writing here is just tearing me up inside. It's so beautiful. They were filled with the love of the beauty of the elves and desired their fellowship. So basically the Valar just wanted the elves to come and just chill. They're like, we want you here because we love you so much. I guess you can't blame them, but still. Mandos again speaks for the 2nd time this book. He's very vocal at the moment, and he says, so it is doomed. So Mandos knows that by summoning the elves to come to see the light in Valinor, they are dooming them, which is like, it's not ominous at all, Mandos. Can you just like chill? From his summons came many woes that afterwards befell. So like, Mandos knows that by the Valar the Valar are being selfish and trying to get the elves to come, the children of Iluvatar to come over, that this is the doom for many elves. And I also think Mandos knows that this is what is supposed to happen, and this is what Iluvatar wants, which is, I'm assuming, why Varda and Manwë are kind of just holding their silence and letting this happen. And then we get to what's called the sundering of the elves, which is such a dramatic way to basically talk about splitting into different sub-ethnic groups, I guess, within the elves. Like, can you imagine if like there was a divorce in the family and you're like, our family is sundered? It's something that someone in Tolkien world would say. Anyway, Orome's like, how can I like dangle a carrot in front of these elves? Let's get like 3 influential elves, show them how cool it is here, and then send them back to talk about how much chocolate and Turkish delight there is on the other side of the river, of the sea. Which is what he does. And so Ingwe, Finwë, and Elwë are the 3 elves who afterwards become kings, and they go to the trees, fall in love, come back, and bring to Cuivianen and tell everyone, and a bunch of the elves like, yeah, let's go. And another bunch are like, and? Like, so there's like, not everyone is like obsessed with going. Many refuse the summons, preferring the starlight and the wide spaces of Middle-earth to the rumour of the trees. And these are the Avari, the unwilling, and they were sundered in that time from the Eldar and never again met until many ages were past. Oh my goodness, the Avari are like not talked about, but at the end of the day, so like the Avari make so much sense. And this is what Ulmo was saying, like, why would you leave this beautiful place that you're in just because of a rumor of 2 trees? Like, I get that. I totally am with the Avari on this. And I really hope that we meet the Avari in future. The unwilling. It's so sad that they're called something like negative. Like, in many ways, they're the strongest willed because they're like, well, this is our home. I want to stay. Like, they're not the unwilling. They're the loyal to Middle-earth. Like, why must we call them something negative? Damn it. But the vast majority of the elves do leave. The first group, which is the smallest group, Ingwe's group, they are the most High Lord elfish race. They are the Vanya. And these are the Vanya are the people who, the elves, the fair elves who are most beloved by Manwë and Varda. And they are the ones I was reading on page 28 that the Vanya Manwë loved best, and of him they received song and poetry, for poetry is the delight of Manwë. So they're writing poems and they're chilling out. They kind of belong in Valinor, to be honest, these Vanya. Like, we'll let them go there. It seems like that's their jam. And that's totally fine. Like, I think I would have a very happy life as a Vanya with poetry and Manwë up in the sky. Like, would it be dull? I don't know. I mean, I'm not an elf, so it's hard to say. There is just no part of me that could ever imagine what it would be like to be immortal, which is why it's so hard to sometimes relate to these elves who at this point are probably already like 200 or 300 years old. Like, okay. And then the next biggest group is the Noldor, which we've also come across. These are Aurle's peeps, and they are the deep elves. Finwë's peeps, I should say. And the biggest group are the Teleri. Teleri? Oh man. The Teleri are the biggest group, and they were the most reluctant group, and they were Elwë's and Olwë's group. Elwë was the one who'd gone and see the light. Olwë was just his little bro. I'm assuming there are female elves somewhere around here. And these guys, like, it's fair enough. They love water and they come to be known as the sea elves, but it makes sense that they are the most water-loving elves because they're obviously the ones that are most close with Ulmo. And if they're most close to Ulmo and kind of like his vibe, then you can see that because Ulmo was the one that was like, live and let live, bro, just like let them do what they want. In which case the Teleri surely are the elves. They're going to be like, we just want to do what we want to do in this moment. We don't want to be ruled by anything. We just want to do what feels right in our nature. And like water does, really, it just goes wherever it wants. And so it makes sense that the Teleri are the most reluctant to follow orders about two trees that apparently are really cool, and that they're most likely just gonna do what they want. Be the most difficult to control, essentially. But they are the biggest group of elves, so at the moment seem like the most interesting group of elves to me. So then we have a couple of paragraphs about how long and slow was the march of the Eldar into the west. Came at last over Ered Luin into the eastern reaches of Beleriand. There they halted and dwelt a while beyond the river Gellion? I think G's are pronounced as... Yeah, G's are hard G's, so that's River Gellion, sorry. So actually by the end of the march of the Teleri, still not saying that right, I know, they only get to this very eastern part of the map in Ered Luin. So they've still got a long way to go. Hopefully they've figured out how to make shoes by now, but I don't know. I don't think horses exist. They're going on foot right now. Kind of cruel. Orome's like, I'm way more powerful than you guys, but I'll just sit on my horse while you walk behind me, okay? Okay. So they go on this journey, and the whole time Orome is like so excited, and he's like riding ahead, but then he gets too far ahead. The elves then stop, and they're like, well, it's actually really nice here. Why don't we just like get out? Why don't we just like make a fire, get out the sausages? Totally fair that they are doing that, because Iluvatar has created his children to love Middle-earth and everything in it. And they do. They love the starlight, they love the water, they love the trees, and they're learning about themselves. And to rip them away from the very land that was created for them, it's only natural that a whole bunch of them are just like, wait, why are we going on this journey again? To leave the land that we love already and want to make a home in? And so they try to stop a bunch of times, and Orome's just like, come on guys, wait, what are you doing? Back up that, what are you doing? For they were filled with wonder at all they saw, and by many lands and rivers they wished to abide. And though all were yet willing to wonder, many feared their journey's end than hoped for it. So many are loving this journey, but they don't want it to end. They don't want to actually leave. And then Olwe, of the host of Olwe, there's someone called Lenwe, because we haven't got enough people ending in the word way. Lenwe is just like, no, I'm not coming. And then just takes a bunch of people and doesn't go and stops. So he forsook the westward march and led numerous people southward down the great river, where they passed out of the knowledge of their kin until long years have passed. So we've lost two bunches of elves. We've lost the initial elves, the unwilling. God, what a terrible name. And now we've lost Lenwe's elves. So they're both kind of gone into obscurity for now. Whether or not they come back, I do not know. These elves that have gone with Lenwe are the Nandor, and they are the ones that absolutely love water and running streams. And they have really good knowledge of trees and herbs, birds and beasts than all the other elves. So these are the wood elves, right? From D&D, yeah. The high elves have already pissed off. They're like, we don't want this disgusting, dirtied Middle-earth. Let's go to Valinor. Whereas the wood elves are like, I'm fucking staying, bruh. There is a really good flow chart thingy-mabob at the back, which I'm sure you've all seen, that has the split of the Vanya, Noldor and Teleri, and then further splits of the Teleri of those who ended up actually going to Aman, the Nandor that stayed, and the Sindar, the Grey Elves. And then the split of the Calaquendi and the Moraquendi. And the Avari. So the Vanya and the Noldor eventually get to come over Ered Luin, the Blue Mountains, and eventually they get to the sea, ready to cross, but it's at that point that they kind of freak out. So this is the Vanya and the Noldor. They get there before the Teleri. The Teleri are just, they're really dawdling. They're taking their time. Orome eventually goes back to Valinor to get the Council of Manwë. Once again, no idea why Manwë can't just come himself. I feel like if Manwë came and just showed them how cool he was, he could do a really good job at convincing a bunch of the elves. But my like dark theory on this is that Manwë would never do that, because what he wanted is he wanted the elves around him who were most like him. That is, he wanted the elves around him who were most the same in liking the trees and peace and the light. And the elves who were more adventurous and rebellious, they were the ones most suited to stay in Middle Earth for times to come. And so this was the first test of the elves, who would come and who would stay. And whoever went and stayed was actually fate for them and best for those particular elves. So I can see how this is called a sundering. It's basically like the first sorting of personalities. It's just a massive personality test. And it's so interesting to think which type of elf you would be. So Orome just leaves the elves for a bit, talks to Manwë, and the Teleri eventually get as well to the Ered Luin, but they didn't quite get as far as the Vanya and the Noldor. They're still kind of behind. But it's quite funny because it says here, Elwë is kind of like sad because he didn't want to be sundered from the Noldor, for he had a really good friendship with Finwë, and he's just like, oh man, I wish the people that I ruled were like more like them so that I could just catch up with my friend. We've got this huge story over, I'm assuming, many, many years, maybe 100 years or so. A big war with Melkor. He's been caught. The earth has been reshaped again. And we end this chapter on such a personal note. Like one elf just being like on a note of friendship and longing for friendship. And this is just so beautiful. And I'm obsessed with this book officially. And like, it's so beautiful. I'll see you in the next video, which will be probably 2 chapters, because of Thingol and Melian is a very short chapter. So then we'll also be doing chapter 4 and 5. So read along with me and I'll see you then.